Today, I was thinking Caro-Kann and we could look at basically. I have some interesting Carlson games out of Caro-Kann. I was thinking basically here. There's a Caro-Kann that I was sort of interested in. One thing that I did notice after going through like Carlson games, basically Carlson games, it seems like the classic Carlson Caro-Kann. The one that involves, basically the classical bishop to f5, knight to g3, bishop to g6. That move order isn't actually played that much, at that super GM level that I was sort of, or that I was most interested in looking at. So I thought that this was kind of interesting. Basically here, Carlson comes up with a move that is sort of unusual. What I know as the main line here is h4. Just so we go through the main line, h4, h6, knight f3, knight d7, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, bishop takes, and queen takes. This I always think of as the main line. Hey, welcome, John. Thanks for joining. But yeah, this is considered to be the classical mainline Caro-Kann, and sort of what the Caro-Kann that I learned to be, the best. But yeah, this basically mainline Caro-Kann, that's not actually played that often, at the super GM level in the current day, which I thought was pretty interesting. Here's a game where Carlson plays knight to h3. I thought this was a pretty interesting move. This doesn't do much to disrupt that bishop on g6. It goes to knight to f4. But this maneuver I thought was really interesting. I thought it was kind of offbeat, not like, something that people will have seen a lot as black. But basically knight to g3, knight to h3. That's the move that deviates. So I showed the main line. Now we're looking at this knight to h3 line. And with this knight to h3 line, knight to h3, knight to h4. Yeah, so the knight wants to go to f4. So I think what the knight wants is to basically take on g6. This normal method, this bishop to d3 method, allows this bishop to take on d3 and black's pawn structure to remain intact. But I think what the knight can do here, go to knight to f3, is basically have this threat on g6. So yeah, with e5, pawn takes, but eventually what's going to happen here is the knight's going to take on g6, and black's pawn structure is going to be not good. So I thought this was really interesting. This is kind of the super this is a super GM variation of playing the Caro-Kann. I liked the line. I thought the line made sense. Hey, welcome, Valor Knight. Thanks for joining. So yeah, h takes g6, bishop to f4, bishop takes, and yeah, white has to sort of decide what to do here, but this is a totally different, this is basically a totally different opening line. Certified ethical hacker. I just passed it this week. I've been working super hard on it, so yeah, basically, I passed the CEH exam on Sunday, so I actually, yeah, but anyways, I passed the test, so I got the title. Yeah, it's like a network security title. But yeah, knight to h3, knight to f6, and then knight goes to f4. E5, pawn takes, queen to a5, c3, and then queen goes there. But yeah, it's interesting. You like black here. Let's see. So knight takes, pawn takes, and then wouldn't it? I mean, I don't hack anyone. Hey, hacking is illegal most places, in most situations. But rook takes, king to d8, bishop to e2, and yeah, rook h3, rook to d1. Yeah, this is a pretty good comparison for white. Hey, welcome, Aphelion. Thanks for joining. But yeah, so yeah, basically the ideas here. Bishop to e4, bishop takes, knight takes, and yeah, white. But yeah, you're making a good point, which is black good here. I think, yeah, I mean, maybe. This knight takes g6 line isn't really even considered to be engine best, but maybe knight takes g6, pawn takes g6, bishop to f4. It's complicated. It's an interesting position. This is relatively new theory for me too. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything particularly dangerous for black in the short term. I think this bishop pair in a relatively open position is good for white. I think that this pawn structure is probably bad for black long term, but yeah, I don't see an easy way for white to exploit it in the short term. So that's what I'm sort of thinking of here, basically. Like, I think basically, Yeah, this knight to h3 line. The whole point of the knight to h3 line, right? This is the line that Carlsen's playing here, is to trade off the knight for the bishop on g6. This makes sense, I think, as a general concept. I mean, I don't think there's anything, there's nothing about that that's not doesn't make sense. But yeah, basically, it allows this white to kind of mess up black's pawn structure, and then it has, white has to sort of decide what to do to continue. But this overall, I guess black's up by a little bit. But I think this is really interesting, to be honest. If black exchanges the dark squared bishop, then yeah. I mean, probably the position is open enough that the bishop pair is valuable. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think in terms of long-term plans here? What are kind of the ideas? Well, this bishop needs to move immediately, so tactically speaking, probably bishop to d2. That's cool. If black, interesting. Why would Magnus trade his bishop? Yeah, so Magnus isn't going to want to trade his bishop pair, but I think that bishop to d2 castles queenside, and maybe like h3 rook e1, that could be good for white. Overall, interesting, I think. I mean, basically this open position. Castles queenside, castles queenside. The engine does evaluate black as slightly better here, but I'm not entirely sure about why. I mean, I guess this knight is more active. But basically the knight on the 5th, white doesn't have anything to parallel that. The light squared bishop doesn't really have much mobility either. I think that's kind of a shortcoming for white in this situation. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. I think it's about. Realistically, I think this is about equal. Like both sides can play very comfortably out of this position. So I think that's true. Bishop to f3, h4, rook 8. Yeah, h5 maybe. Yeah, I like that as well. I like that plan. Bishop to f3 and then h4 and then h5 and basically trading off pawns on the queen side. Now, the only thing about that plan to think about is that it does remove black's weakened doubled pawn, but other than that, I was actually thinking, now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking knight to e5. Oh, well, actually, yeah, that got stopped. So I'm thinking knight to e5, and then basically, anything but f6, knight to g5. But maybe black would play f6 in that case. Yeah. It's really interesting, I think. I mean, this is complicated. I think, yeah, middle game play here is not super obvious to me. It's white to move here. Bishop to c5. Yeah, bishop to c5 seems like a good square for black's bishop. Yep. f2 is a weakness. But I'm wondering. It's sort of like it's the type of position where you would take minutes, or you should be taking minutes in an over the board game. So I'm thinking like, yeah, this is tricky. Maybe knight to, I think maybe knight to e4, but it's not obvious to me. Or maybe castled queenside, bishop to f3. That line is fine. Yep, that makes sense. I mean, basically, I think black's getting extra mileage out of white not having a centralized piece like that. So I'm thinking like queenside castles could be good. It's just tricky. So yeah, I'm gonna let this one sit for a minute or two, because this was a complicated situation. Yeah. That would be interesting. Yeah, I'm actually, that's an interesting plan. King f3, king f2. I like that. Except bishop to c5 causes problems with king to f2. Really complicated. Um, I was wondering if there were any queenside threats here. I mean, is there any way that white? That's what I'm sort of wondering about. Is there any way that white can expand this queenside and place pressure on black here? So like castle's kingside, and then yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because these bishops are fairly well set up to start on the queen side. So like b4, b5, I feel like that could potentially be problematic for black, right? I mean, that's interesting. I don't know, I think you'd have to be careful because there's things like the bishop on d2 is hanging, but maybe castles, and then castles kingside, and then b4, b5. Anyways, white castle's queenside here. Yeah. Yeah, but there's no really. I mean, you can get more control over the center, but I'm wondering. Yeah, bishop takes. Okay, so now this is very equal, right? But I'm wondering what white does from this position. Sure. Yeah, totally. Bishop to c4. Bishop to c4. Knight f6. Bishop to g5. Bishop to c5. Bishop takes. G takes, knight e4. Yeah, I think that the pin is a problem. So I think like rook to d8 causes some issues. But maybe in the absence of the last move, because I don't think knight e4 is playable. But I think that here, maybe after castle's queenside. Okay, yeah, sure. Castle's queenside, f5. But f5, so basically we were looking at this position to start, right? If you castle queenside first, then black plays f5. So castle's queenside f5, but the other way. So basically this line. Oh, without black castling. Well, I don't think you can really stop black from castling. So bishop to f4, bishop takes, knight to d5, bishop to d2, and black castles. So I think. I mean, we can go through it. I think the line that you're talking about. So after castling here, I think it's an interesting line without. It's an interesting line without knight to e4. So the sideline that I was thinking of was bishop to c4, knight takes, and this is interesting. Maybe castle's kingside here, but yeah. No worries. No. I mean, it's all good. Yeah. So basically, here's the situation that I was curious about. It's white to move here, and then what should white do? And the choices are either attack on the king side or attack on the queen side with things like b4, b5, or castle's queen side with castles here. And then, but the issue is if castles immediately, then black shuts down a lot of the center play with f5. So I don't think any. I mean, I don't know if bishop to c4, but I'm just looking at this, basically I'm looking at this position. This is the position to start with. This bishop on d2, knight g3, and it's white to move. And then we were looking at bishop to c4. g5 is a weakness then. Yes, after f5, yeah. So maybe bishop to g5 here is the best play. Right, and actually that's what happened in the game. So castle queenside and then rook d1. Yeah, I mean that's what happened. So basically castle queenside, the rook's on d1, and then this rook, I guess, basically this provides a line of attack from the rook on d1 into the queenside here. So bishop f4, bishop takes, knight takes, and yeah, Right, the center is open. So I don't know, maybe bishop to c4, bishop e2, and like rook d1, knight e2, knight g4 or something. I'm just curious. Honestly, it's but it's like hard to assemble a plan, right? I mean, this is sort of about middle. This is sort of about middle game planning, right? Sort of coming up with what to do here. That castle's queenside plan. The thing about this game, which is sort of weird to me, is that I guess all the plans are super flexible. So it doesn't really feel like black is or white is set on any fixed plan. This feels surprisingly aimless for a super GM game. Now black has control of the center, and this looks good. And yeah, I agree that I think black is okay. So let's look at this this castle's queenside plan, and then h4, h5. So let's see what happens here. So like f5, and then here like h4. I'm curious about this line too. H4, bishop to c5, and then this f2 weakness shows up. So rook d f1. But I like this. This plan is actually pretty interesting. I don't know what the engine says, but basically this plan, trying to create breaks on the king side, right? This is interesting. Basically this one I'm curious about, because rook h e8, and then like h5 maybe, or bishop to c4. It's sort of hard to decide. But I like, or no, wait, that hangs the pawn. So bishop to d3, I guess. Bishop to d3, and then maybe. Yeah, bishop to f3 is fine too. But I'm kind of curious to see how much of an attack this bishop can generate on this king side. But this is, okay, so this is the king side plan, right? Bishop to d3. And then here, bishop to d3, knight e5, bishop. I would play bishop to c2 here, and then maybe knight to g4. It's complicated, very complicated game. Castles f5, but I'm thinking h4 is the idea. h4, h5. All right, let's try bishop to f3. Yeah, I makes sense. F5, and then h4, rook d1, bishop to f3 here. Yeah, bishop takes d5 is always a tap out, right? So basically, yeah, I think so, right? I think undermining this king side seems like the correct idea. So bishop to f3. Yeah, now black has to sort of decide what to do, but say knight to e5, and then, I don't know, h5. Here, send on, for sure, Red. Here, send on, the Discord. Feel free, this is the Discord, Red Pandas. Yeah, but yeah, we can get to it by the end of the week, Red Pandas. There's plenty of time. So yeah, please submit in the game submission section, and we'll get to it. But yeah, absolutely, I'm very interested in looking at it, Red Pandas, for sure. But yeah, no. For now, we got the lesson, and we gotta we have games for today already. But anyways, I'm thinking, okay, so here knight e5. But I think the kingside undermining plan. I think this is probably the plan that we would go with. So let's look at what happened in the game. So basically, bishop to g5, gf3. Yeah, no. Thanks, Red Pandas. Yeah, if you just submit the game, I'll confirm when it'll be for. It'll be by the end of the week for sure. So probably, I'd say Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, thanks, Red Pandas. Please send it, and we'll do. I'll confirm when it's which lesson it's going to be in. But it'll be on the stream soon. Yeah, something like that. Bishop takes, knight takes, bishop to c4, knight e5. Okay, so this provides an opportunity for black to play. But it's funny, in the game there wasn't really that. I thought that kingside undermining was good. Let's just see, bishop to g5, gf3, f4. Bishop g5, bishop takes, bishop to c4. All right, let's go back to the bishop to f3 line. So bishop to f3. Yeah, so knight to e5, right? Knight to e5, bishop to g5, knight takes f3, pawn takes, and then f4. Interesting. Yeah, so bishop to e7. Okay, bishop to e7, maybe rook to d1. Or f4 here. F4 you were thinking. F4. I think F4 is not immediately good because I think bishop takes and then pawn takes and sort of this king side is blocked off. So I think that maybe here after bishop to so after rook to h8, bishop to d3 or bishop to f3, knight e5, and then the engine's recommending bishop to e2 by the way, but I want to continue this undermining attack. So maybe h5. Oh, but then the f2 pawn hangs, right? Oh, f2, bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, knight d3. Interesting. You don't like f4. Yeah, maybe h4, h5. I just think h4, h5 makes the most sense. But this undermining plan, h4, h5, and then pressure on this g6 pawn, that makes sense to me. So yeah, overall I like this line. This is the line that I like. Basically bishop takes, knight takes, bishop to c4. Here I would shift to h4. This is what was played in the game. This castle's queenside. So basically here, bishop to d2, castle's queenside, f5, bishop to g5, and yeah, basically this plays into a situation where there's not really that much. But I think here, now bishop to g5, bishop takes, knight takes, h4 seems like the best play for white. But let's just go through the rest of the game. Bishop to d3, rook takes, king takes, and now black has gotten the center. So I don't know. I'm not convinced this was the best plan overall for white. So yeah, basically here, knight on d5, h3, and yeah, rook to d1. This is all, this all makes sense. Now with this knight posted, the engine's like back to equal. So knight e4, f3. And anyways, this play for white, right? This traded off about equal. So I thought this was really interesting. I mean, it basically played into a draw. But anyways, we've digressed a lot from our opening. Why was h6 played? I don't think it was. Was it? Why was h3 played here? h3, king e7, rook to d1, f4. Yeah, you make a good point. I guess there's some threats. I mean, the thing about knight to g4 is that bishop takes g4, pawn takes g4, leaves black with the tripled isolated pawns. So yeah, you're sort of right. I mean, I don't really see a good reason for h3. g5, g4. But I don't really see a continuation. Yeah, I guess it's that. I think it's Aphelion. I think it's Aphelion's. Hey, welcome, Harsh. Thanks for joining. So yeah, I think it's that. I think it's basically that this H3 move, basically this it's to prevent rook takes H2. Yeah, it's probably that superficial. H3. Yep. But anyways, we've digressed a lot. I wanted to get another game out of. I wanted to get another game out of the Caro-Kann. But what did we learn? We learned at Super GM level, right? This knight to H3 move is what Carlsen played here. This is really interesting to me because the main line, which we can go through, basically knight to G3, bishop to G5, H4, knight D7, knight F3, or sorry, H4, H6, knight F3, knight to D7, H5, bishop there, bishop takes, queen takes. This is the mainline Caro-Kann. Like this is the mainline classical Caro-Kann. But the classical variation starts with knight to G3. So, but what's interesting here, basically, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I actually think it's a playable line. But basically, knight to H3 here, right, is moving things forward for white. So knight to H3, the alternatives are H4, knight F3, bishop to C4. But I think knight to H3 here moves things sort of, basically this knight to H3 versus knight to F4. This was played in it was played in a rapid, so like just some random chess.com tournament rapid, but very high level game in any case. Why can we exchange bishops by playing bishop to D3 in opening? Usually just because it moves the queen forward. It basically creates a threat that black has to deal with. So black has to deal with the bishop to D3 threat by trading the bishop, because bishop takes H7 is bad for black. But it brings the queen forward to D3, and then the queen can actively participate in the game. Another thing about it is that the center gets pretty locked. So basically this bishop to F5, knight to G3, bishop to G6. The light squared bishops here aren't incredibly strong. Bishop to C4 is really the line for white. But yeah, anyways, I thought this was interesting. I thought this was an interesting way to play the Caro-Kann. An interesting sideline played by the world champion is always cool and kind of valuable. I mean, it really validates the quality of the line, basically. Knight to H3 is being playable for white. But I thought this was really interesting. So anyways, I wanted to get through another one, but I thought this was really interesting. This transposed into an interesting game. And conceptually speaking, basically trading this knight off for this bishop on G6. Basically, this knight onto that bishop for G6, that creates an interesting situation for white, where he's messed up black's pawn structure, but at the same time, he's given black this open rook file. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? Interesting game. All right, on to the next one. Let's think about this. So here we go. There's a few lines here. Let me just find the next game. This is a non-Carlsen out of the main line. And this one I sort of wanted to go for... yeah, of course, John. But this is a non-Carlsen. Why did Artemiev allow him to have G7, G6, F7 pawn complex? Yeah, good question. Basically that rook on H8 got to attack on the open file, but I don't think it was particularly avoidable. That's what I thought was interesting about the opening. No, I thought it's a good question, John. I thought it was an interesting question about the opening, which is basically I don't think that there was any way for black to stop knight to H3, knight to F4. That's what I was thinking. Hey, welcome, Matt Yop. Thanks for joining. But yeah, basically I don't think there was any way for black to really prevent the knight taking on G6 threat. So yeah, basically that's what we learned, right? There was no way for black to handle or basically no way for black to handle knight to H3, knight to F4, knight to G6 without losing that F5 bishop. So I don't know, an interesting line. I thought I hadn't really seen much of that line before, so I thought that was interesting. Okay, here's a non-Carlsen. I'm guessing this is probably a draw, but bishop to G5, knight to G3, H4, H6, knight to F3, and here's a deviation line E6. Okay, so E6 is really interesting. E6, is not. So the main lines here, the most common is knight to d7. I've also seen knight to f6 here, but e6 is kind of not that common. So basically Carlsen plays this e6 line, which allows white to play knight to e5. White can also opt for the kind of the traditional thing, which is just this bishop to d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. This is also out of this classical Caro-Kann, but yeah, this isn't as good, for white. So basically, if white wants to, he can start that Caro-Kann attack with bishop to d3, bishop takes d3. But here, white has the opportunity to play knight to e5 and get a free extra developing move here. So knight e5, bishop there, queen takes, knight to d7, and yeah, now white's looking pretty good. So out of that e6, yeah, so it stops the d5 break, right? And another thing about it is that if you play this h5 line, this is evaluated as still reasonably good for black. So bishop to d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. But knight to e5 is tempo, right? And there's not really much that black can do to challenge this knight on e5. Or that's a key aspect of the knight on e5, is basically f6 is awkward and opens up this h5 into g8 diagonal, right? Hey, good morning, Liquid. Thanks for joining. But yeah, I think here basically f6, queen to h5, and then this queen is sort of facing in towards that king side. So overall, I mean, that's sort of what I understand from this. So bishop to d3, this line is not as, I mean, bishop to d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. There's no way to challenge this knight on e5. So I think this is really kind of interesting play. So there's two things that have been interesting so far here, right? The first is, black played this playable e6 line, which works to prevent that d5. I guess I would say, if you want to improve practical application, stick with tactical training. Basically, tactical training is how to execute, right? So you have the understanding, you have the understanding, and then the really important part is to be able to execute it effectively. So the way to do that is to get really strong at tactics. So I would say, my standard thing, 1 to 2 hours of studying puzzles a day, tactics, puzzles, that kind of thing a day for a month. I think it'll really, provide good returns. So that's what I would say. I mean, I would go with tactics. I would just say spend a lot of time on tactics. CT-ART is great. Chess tempo, puzzle rush, puzzle battle. But all of those, provide an opportunity for you to improve. But it really does become about execution at a pretty high level. So that's my recommendation. Is basically, get your tactics to be as strong as they can. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so g6 is a weakness. Queen to g6. Yeah. So basically, knight to e5, and now this this bishop to h7 move, bishop to d3, queen takes d3. White is showing a pretty solid position here. Knight to d7, f4, but nothing that black can do can really challenge this knight on e5. So yeah, basically at any point here, if f6 is played, there's no way to challenge the knight on e5. I mean, I don't know. I guess I would say, the rating system on chess.com, I should probably know better, to be honest, Liquid. But what's your puzzle battle rating? Because I actually do puzzle battle. I don't do the puzzles. I do the puzzle battle or puzzle rush. What's your you want your puzzle battle rating to be 2200. There's a big difference between puzzle battle so puzzle battle 2200 and puzzles 2200 is a big difference. So I would say you have a lot of room to continue to improve there, Liquid. Right. But yeah, no, I think that 2200 puzzles is not really a good representation of people use their chess.com puzzle rating, but I'm pretty sure after seeing it enough times, I'm pretty sure that it's 400 400 different. All right, then stick with Puzzle Racer or Puzzle Storm. I'm not favorable to chess.com, but I would say really just spend 1 to 2 hours a day. It sounds like you guys have it's basically there's a lot of room for improvement. I don't know. Let's see. I don't do puzzle. Let's do a puzzle battle. I don't do puzzle. I don't know the puzzles rating that much. To be honest. But let's do puzzle battle. you really want to be able to very quickly convert and be able to see a lot of kind of opportunities here. But I think that's where you can spend time. All right, Super Teak, let's go. Good luck. But here, yeah, this is your idea. So really just spend 1 to 2 hours a day. I said every time that I would recommended it, I would do it myself just to prove that I do it. But yeah, basically, 1 to 2 hours of this a day for like a month or a few months, it'll really help. I mean, it's not the type of thing that you can really, there's just no shortcut on it. So if you're not doing this, I guess I guess I would say you're sort of shooting for a for improvement without doing kind of the steps to improve. This is where you really need to spend a lot of time. This is your quickest return. No, it's fine. It's all good. But yeah, no, basically, this continuation is, this puzzle battle. I guess I was just thinking, I wanted to show this, out of the sake of, I wanted to show this out of the sake of, right now the issue is that you can't recognize tactics. You can't set them up. I don't know. I guess I would just say, are your tactics sharp enough? Is my question. But this is your kind of ability to this is the place where you will see the quickest improvement if you play. Yeah, I think here this this will be your best. This is your best route. This is where you will see the quickest efficiencies. In terms of time spent studying. So yeah, I strongly recommend doing this for 1 to 2 hours a day. If you can do this for 1 to 2 hours a day, I think that you will. I think that you will see the quickest return on your time spent studying. It's just there's not much of a shortcut here. Is my point. Basically, if this is an instrumental part of everyone's improvement. So if you this one's kind of tricky. What's the answer to this one? For some reason, I'm not seeing this puzzle very well. Oh, it's that. Okay, it's that. All right. Puzzle rush or puzzle battle. Yeah, I would say it doesn't. I mean, I would say it doesn't matter. But yes, that's the. I think it's the same thing. You really just need to be doing that time spent puzzle training, and it's where you're going to see the quickest return. So, like at the same time, if you're not doing, if you're not doing this, then your puzzles, basically your tactics aren't improving at the same rate that that they could be, and you're not seeing the quickest return on your study time. Is my point. Yeah, let's just good game. No, good game, Valor Knight. Thanks for joining. But let's just see. I wanted to see if I could get to 30. This round was pretty tough, I think. Let's see. Yeah, whatever. Okay, 29. But I would say, that's your point. Or that's the point of this improvement. You really should spend time on this. It's your quickest return. I'm just saying, just roll with it is one of these things. Like basically, I think that if you just do it, you'll see, within a month or two that it really is your best. That it really is the quickest return on your time spent studying. It's just weightlifting that everyone has to do. It's not like, it's the type of thing people don't, masters don't talk about it necessarily because, it's not something that they can sell, to people. But what I would say is that, if you do it, at the level that you're at, under 1800, it's really where you will see the quickest return on your time spent studying. So that I strongly recommend it. I think, if you just do it, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. To be honest, I think that if you're under 1800, and you're consistent about it, I think that you can make big marginal improvements there. I don't know. I don't know the puzzles rating system, to be honest, but I don't know. I think there's still I think there's still room to improve. If you're under 1800, on the system, I think that I really think your returns continue to be best on tactics, but it's up to you. So yeah, Liquid. I think maybe I don't know. That's where I would recommend. It may not feel like it's what's holding you back, but I think that that you have more room to improve than you might think. Um, yeah, but you know, that's I mean, I think you need to be able to see them 100% of the time. I think there's a lot of utility in being able, and again, I think a diverse set of things to do here, right? Is basically look for uh, yeah, I mean, I would say keep it diverse. So do a mix of puzzle battle and puzzle or and puzzle survival or something. But really, just spend the 1 to 2 hours on puzzles. It's like it's sort of nitpicking over it's nitpicking over kind of small things when at the same time if you're really if you're really putting in the 1 to 2 hours of puzzles a day and you've done that consistently for a month, then I'm more than happy to talk about kind of what the then I'm very happy to talk about kind of what the actual strategy in terms of maximizing on your puzzles spent time is. But I don't get the sense that people are actually doing the 1 to 2 hours. You've done the 1 to 2 hours of puzzles a day since 2017. If you've done that, then all right. If you're really telling me that and it's really true, then yeah, then I'll have to consider a different route. Liquid 1 to 2 hours. I'm just saying, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's where you will see the quickest return on your study time. And if you don't do it, then you're sort of nitpicking over something that you're not doing anyways. That's not an efficient use of time. But yeah, interesting, Liquid. If you're really doing that since 2017, then yeah, no, I mean no, I think that's normal. I think you really have to be disciplined. It's just about discipline at the end of the day. If 1 to 2 hours a day of puzzles, that's where you should spend your time. And we debate later over the specifics, but yeah, Liquid. If you really are doing that, then I'll have to think a little bit more about what to offer you. But my suspicion is that people aren't doing it. I think Neekson's is great. Neekson's is awesome. I think GM Neekson's is really a step forward. GM Neekson's, by the way, gives free chess lessons. Just so you guys know, and I'm not trying to sell this to you, but I'm just saying this is GM lessons for 1 to 2 EUR an hour. But yeah, if you guys want that, if you guys want, so first, I think GM Neeson's is great. I think his boot camps where he's giving free lessons as a grandmaster is a huge win, right? Like I think basically GM Neeson's play, right, is great. I think basically the free boot camps that GM Neeson's does are really what chess is going to become, or chess lessons are going to become. I think killer chess training is not quite as good as that, to be honest. I think killer chess training charges you GM lessons for 1 to 2 euros an hour. I think that's a big step forward in terms of pricing. But GM Neeson's, completely free boot camps from a grandmaster scaled to 300 people. That's really what the future is. So if anyone knows, if anyone, basically wants those, great free chess lessons, GM Neeson's is really what to do there. But killer chess training is almost as good. That's only 1 to 2 euros an hour. It's still a big improvement over current price points. But yeah, that killer chess training I think is fantastic. Basically the fact that that is yeah, no. So I think basically that chess yeah. Hey, hey, I'm giving them for free. I think free is the real long-term model. I don't think there's any way that but just so you guys know, the killer chess training is GM lessons for 1 to 2 euros an hour. I'll keep if you guys are curious about it, I'm more than happy to keep sharing that option with you. But anyways, these free chess lessons are great. I learn a lot from them. And what did we learn? We learned basically that this e6 move is playable for black. In this game, white gets kind of a really good Yeah, so basically, this queen to d5, queen takes d5, this advancement for white, I think this is great. So yeah, basically g4, g4, g5, uh, uh, okay. So yeah, bishop to d3. This is it. A bishop to d3. Bishop takes. Queen takes. f4. Uh, Queen takes. Pawn takes. h4. And this, this basically, is yeah, that reverse Carlsbad, and basically white gets to play g4, g5, and start playing on the queen side. But yeah, another kind of sideline that Carlsen's play kind of indicates is playable this early e6 as opposed to knight to d7 or knight to f6. But yeah, this is that's for white. This I like this position for white. You don't think g4 g5? I think g4 g5 is good. Uh, yeah. But yeah, rook g3, rook f3, and basically white's continuing on here. So, anyways, g4, g5, that seems to be good for white. And yeah, interesting games. We spent a lot of time on the first one, so we didn't get as much time on the second one. But yeah, this continuation is this continuation e6 is definitely validated for white. So, um, yeah. Anyways, g4, g5. That gets basically white gets to expand on the king side, and yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Interesting. All right, let's take a look. Just in case you guys are interested, we have the tournament today. Today I was going to do game in 10. I think I'll probably stream the first round or two. But yeah, here's the tournament. Today's tournament. Yeah, if anyone wants to play, feel free. My rating is messed up, but I should probably fix it. Right, yeah. So attack on both sides is more flexible here. Anyways, I wanted to move on from this game. I just really wanted to show off the opening. So yeah, let's take a look. We have the viewer games coming up. We have first up is Liquid's game. All right, Liquid. Let's take a look. All right, Liquid. Thank you for sending the game. So I really want to give you a good explanation of this, because I think if you're making the point that basically you're doing 1 to 2 hours of puzzle training per day, and you've been doing that for a while, we got to look at your game, because that's yeah. good question. Very good point, Red Pandas, for sure. Yeah, I did one too many simuls. I had this one simul where it defaulted 50 games at once, and then it hurt my rating by about 300 points. So e4, knight f6, why not d4? Well, let's take it from black's perspective. So, I mean, knight to f3 also controls these squares. Also, knight to f3 basically sets up d4. D4, and basically, black will have to decide what to do here. But e5, bishop to b5, a6, and then black has to sort of choose either bishop to a4 or bishop takes c6. Sort of. Yeah, I think there's some elements of that. Okay, I mean, yeah, that's a strategy. I'm not sure about that idea in general. I think I would develop positional play in the positions that you're the most comfortable with. To be honest, really, I think the best way to develop positional play is to just play your normal thing and then just spend tons of time thinking about the concepts behind what's going on. But e4, knight c6, knight to f3, e6, bishop to b5, bishop to d7, and yeah. Knight to d4. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Is this slow for white? Maybe. Let's see. Bishop to d7 can also develop with tempo. Yeah, no. So you're right. I mean, I'm not sold on black's. Or I mean, I'm not sold on bishop to b5 here. I think bishop to b5 is weak for black. So knight to c6 in general. Okay. So the Nimzowitsch is a complicated opening. I'm not sure, what people think of it at this point. I think that this 1 point lead for white means that white's getting a pretty big position. But yeah, black never played e5. So basically, this bishop to b5 doesn't threaten to win anything. It does threaten to trade off the knight and leave black with a weird pawn structure. But yeah, bishop to d7, castles, g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7. Yeah, I mean, overall here, I think white's a little bit better. But okay, I'm fine. Considering that black played the Nimzowitsch, right? D6 I think is D6 is not the move here. The main move here in the Nimzowitsch is just to turn it back into a king's pawn opening. But if you really want to play a consistent, this is the Williams variation. Okay, so D6, D6, keeps it a very consistent, Nimzo-Indian. C3 then D4 is much better. Bishop b5, bishop d7, white castles, g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7, awesome. And then, yeah, black has to sort of decide what to do here. So basically, I think this is fine. I think that, this is fine play for black. I'm not sure if white optimized, though. Bishop g7, d3, yeah, I mean, so yeah, this d3, knight to f6, this seems like a fine continuation for black. Why d3 when d4 is possible? Yeah, no, I think you're making the right point. Well, I mean, the first is d4 really possible here? I mean, d4, yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. I think the d4 is solidly better than d3 here. Yeah, d3 is very passive relative to d4, and you see on the eval shift, it's about half of a pawn. Here, the eval for white is about 0.8, and here the eval for white is about 0.3. So yeah, no, d4 is clearly better. I think white's done a lot of kind of moves here that have not captured the center immediately. You didn't want to play e5 because you didn't want to block in your fianchettoed bishop. I mean, I don't think it's... I wouldn't say necessary here, to be completely honest. I mean, e5 is the engine, or e5 is the opening book move, but it does block in that bishop. So let's just see, e5. Yeah, so I don't think e5 is that great, to be honest, at this point. I'm not so sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with knight f6 here, to be honest. It does make better challenges for the center e5, but I think the point about it blocking in the bishop is legitimate. Like that's a real point. Knight to f6. Hey, yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining. But yeah, knight f6. Thanks for participating as always, John. I really appreciate it, John. Thank you. D5, knight takes d5, bishop takes, knight takes, queen to e2, and yeah, black's better by about 1.5 pawns here. So knight to f6, e5 was a shocker. Yeah, e5 doesn't really help. Doesn't help white that much. Yeah, that was just an overextension by white. You're completely right about that. Yep. Yeah, there's no good reason for white to play e5 here. I completely agree with that. Just loses the pawn. So, tactics, right? I mean, I think this, d5 is, or e5 is the move that, your opponent didn't really spend enough time on the tactics that refute that to like a two-move variation. Um, I mean, yeah, I don't think Liquid is a Nimzowich opening player. I mean, you're not right, Nimzo or Liquid. I think you said this was not your normal. You said this was not your normal opening. So knight f3, d6, bishop to b5, bishop to d7, g6, and I think I think that the Nimzowich opening, yeah, no. So I think French is probably good. Can I go through the opening middle game slower? Yeah, sure, no problem. But bishop to d7, and white's up by about 0.75. Bishop g6, knight f6. But yeah, I think black's way better after e5. I mean, I don't think the middle game is that complicated, to be honest. I think knight to I think e5 is just such a bad move that basically black capitalizes and gets ahead. Like this, this is just fine. Now black is fine. Sorry to bounce around, but I really want to get the opening right. So after knight to f3, which is playable in this Nimzo Indian, the most common move is to go e5 and transpose it into the Italian game. Okay, d6 is the Williams variation, most consistent. Bishop to b5, and then either e5 or bishop to d7 for black. So bishop d7, castles, and then but e5 here is better. E5 and g6, and that's better. So this is so d3 was unnecessarily passive, and e5 is just bad. So by the point that this happens, right, this move 7 e5, white's giving up a pawn for no good reason. So yeah. I mean, sort of, what do we think? What do we think, right? E5 and I think black's just worse. We can look through this, but I don't think there was really much better for black. Considering the black played the Nimzo Indian, which I think is not that objectively good for black. This e5 and black has black has kind of a good and lasting advantage. 1 point up for black. That should be very helpful. Maybe not completely winning yet, but better. Oh yeah, thank you, Rana. But yeah, bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, queen to e2, and castles. And black's up by like a pawn and a half. This looks good. Bishop d2, c6. Fine. Yeah, this looks good. I like. There's nothing I've seen in this game so far. I mean, besides the fact that you've played an opening, the Nimzowich, right, which is not as good, not objectively that good. I think black is just good. I mean, I don't think resignation, but I think that this situation, right? I think black's just up by a pawn and a half. I think black's just significantly better. Losing the e5 pawn was really an error for black. b3, c5. I think instead knight to c5. Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think there's I mean, and I think white's losing, right? In this. So I think that, black sort of needs to determine what to do. Or white needs to determine what to do to maximize chances. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think knight to c5, knight to e6, knight to h5, knight to f4 provides a pretty well-made attack for black. I think maybe queen to h5 or queen to a5 could be good for black, but yeah, basically the options here. This continuation, white's rook on f1 is underdeveloped relative to black, so rook to e8. But yeah, this continuation for black, I think this is yeah, I agree, random. So queen and rook battery on the e file. Yeah, no disagreement here, random. So yeah, I think knight to c5, queen to a5, and black is just good. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree, Random, for sure. So knight to c5, queen to a5. These are the moves for black, and yeah, bishop takes, knight to d5, and yeah, nothing. Knight to b6. There's just not much play for white. Yeah, no, I thought this was fine. Lol. Rand is very excited about this game. E4, D4, queen to C6, queen to B3, pawn takes, pawn takes. Yeah, no, I think basically, you know, you've sent a game where I don't think there's too many errors, Liquid. I think you've played this pretty well and it looks good. Hey, thanks very much for the follow, Unknown. Thanks for joining. No, I think you should just study tactically. Just study, Liquid. You know, I think the tactical study, if you really are doing that 1 to 2 hours a day you're talking about, you should be able to close out most wins pretty effectively. Yeah, I mean, what was your accuracy in this game? This game does not appear to have any key moments. That's weird. Yeah, let's look. Something weird just happened to the engine. Tactics determine games more than half the time at under 1800 level. So that's what I'm saying. You know, basically, you know, I think that I think that the focus on tactics is important because, you know, more than half of your games are getting decided on tactics. So that's what I would think. That's really weird. I don't know why the engine refed out there. That was really weird. If anyone wants to join the tournament, just since we've got a minute till the engine restarts, here's today's tournament. But yeah, what happened? I thought black played pretty well. What were the errors that were given for black here? I mean, nothing really up to this point, right? Let's just trim this game. Let's go to move 28 on this. I want to see the move 28. I feel like black played pretty accurately. So if you cut this to move 28, I wonder what black's accuracy score is. Here's where I want to leave it. Let's see. Okay. So now let's run a game report from here. Yeah, I think that's about right, Rand. So yeah, in this game, I mean, honestly, what happened? So this Nimzowitsch opening, knight to c6, bishop to d7, bishop to b5 was inefficient for white. But in terms of improving black's game, I thought that really this was pretty solid. White didn't give you many opportunities to improve too much. Queen to b6, c5. I think instead here after b3, probably probably knight to h5 looks good. Knight to h5, knight to c4. After b3, queen to b4. That's a pretty aggressive thing to do. Yeah, so queen to b4. Yeah, that looks fine. I like that play for black. Queen to a5 is also possible. Queen to a5 forks that knight and pawn, and white will have to spend a move defending that. But yeah, but I'm thinking queen to a5 here, right? Given the choice between the two. Same basic concept, right? But the queen to a5 threatens that pawn more immediately. Although, you know, the queen to b4 gives black the 4th rank, but I think that the threat on the pawn is more valuable. So what was the accuracy here? Still 78.7. Interesting. All right. All right. All right, so let's think of improvements for black in this game. I thought that this all made sense. c5, basically knight takes f6 was better than bishop takes f6. This makes sense, right? You can sort of see why knight takes f6 is better than bishop takes f6 here because of the allowing of the d5 knight. So I think that's the first positional improvement. So yeah, you're looking at this game. Liquid, basically knight takes, so Liquid, I think this is your first improvement in this game. I think that that otherwise everything's been sort of consistent with the Nimzowitsch, but this improvement is worth over a pawn on eval. But knight takes f6, and this knight controls a lot of these valuable squares. So knight takes f6, or bishop takes f6, and basically this knight to d5 is going to be a move for white. Yeah, right, exactly. So I think basically knight takes f6 instead. Knight takes f6, and basically white has to sort of decide what to do. But this is a better continuation for black. And then basically, you know, you want to capitalize on this opportunity. Well, I think this one move is as well. I think is not as good for black. I think black has the advantage of a minor piece here. And I don't think there's any I think you know, both for the reason that you can set up basically bishop to g7, knight to f6. That's good for black. I think that this you know, I think basically this queen to a4, or basically yeah. So I think bishop to g7 here. You know, fighting white for this outpost on d5. I think this is a good continuation. So bishop to g7 is, I think, an improvement over rook to b8. And then with queen to a4, bishop g7, rook to e4, knight to b6. I think basically this plays out pretty well for black. But yeah, these are two improvements that I would give black, you know, give for black in this game. I think the first is knight takes f6, and then not allowing this knight to secure this outpost. And then once the knight's on the outpost, you know, working to basically remove it from that outpost. So bishop to g7, knight to f6. That's the continuation on for black. F5, rook to h4, bishop to f6, pawn takes c5, and yeah, now I think white didn't really capitalize on this. Rook to e4 is a mistake for white. And I think you're pretty much good after this. Except this. What happens here? So this is a big tactical error. F4. Oh man, F4 creates a lot of threats from this queen. Yeah. So I think yeah, this so these are tactical mistakes, Liquid. Honestly, this is something that you should see. You know, basically king to h6 allows f4, and that's a big tactical mishap, right? Both, I think, Liquid. But I mean, you know, basically here, this points to tactical oversight. So king to h8 here, I think, is better for black. And then, yeah. No, you do. You definitely do. On chess.com, at least, you do. They teach tactically resourceful defense also. But yeah, I would put more time into that. I would put more time into that liquid. As soon as you got to iron this out of your game, because this is basically missing a 2-move combination by white. F4 and black is pretty much busted here. So that's more volatility than you can allow. And then bishop to G7 still doesn't fix the F4 problem. F4 is superior to bishop to G7. Here you're actually you can hold on, you can save this basically with F4. So these are two tactical errors that luckily enough white didn't play. But anyways, black ended up winning, but there were some tactical mishaps. So in terms of looking over this game, basically the issues with allowing the knight outpost on d5. So first, knight takes f6, preventing this knight from getting outposted on d5. The second one was, once with the knight outposted on d5, you should basically try to get the knight to be de-outposted on d5. So I'm thinking bishop to g7. And then once that knight is there, knight b6, queen takes b6. Basically, once this is there, I think that black is good until these late game tactical errors. But yeah, basically, I think that this bishop to g5, queen to h6, I think there wasn't much. I think that this missing of f4 is a pretty large tactical oversight. So yeah, I think f4 continues on for white. Queen to a3, and yeah, that's it. Anyways, really good game. Thank you very much for sending it, Liquid. Those two tactical errors and the 2 positional errors involving d5. I think that's it. But yeah, thank you very much for sending the game, Liquid. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining. Thank you for sending the game, and yeah, cool, awesome. All right, and then we've got a Felion's game, and then we've got one other. So I'm gonna do the other one first. But yeah, thank you very much for sending the game, Liquid. Appreciate it. So d4, d5. So this is Sagarnath's game. Let's take a look. So Sagarnath is playing white, or Sagarnath is playing black. Sorry. E3 is a kind of a weird move for white. E3, I guess I would say, blocks in this bishop. Much more common, E3 basically is a kind of a move that creates problems without solving many problems. I think E3 and C4 is probably the best, or, E3 and then C4 becomes the best continuation. Yeah. Hey, be cool, Random. Be nice, how about you send us one of your games, Random? Honestly, yeah, it's up to you, but, these are other people's games. Be nice. So yeah, e3, knight f6, bishop to b5, bishop to d7, queen to d3. Yeah, basically, this continuation. So e3, knight f6, bishop to d7, queen to d3, a6. All of this, basically, this leads to a big tactical error for white. Queen to d3, bishop to a4, bishop takes, bishop to b3, bishop to d7, knight to c3, e6. Black's showing a big advantage by this. So really, what did we can learn a little bit more about this opening, but I think this game's pretty much decided by this point. Yeah, I mean, I think basically black capitalizes on this. Let's think a little bit about this, though. Black unnecessarily, I think, opens up his... I think basically black's up by a huge amount here. So black's up by a full piece and has a good position. So I think that here, knight to d7 is probably the, probably the continuation. Knight to d7, and now, white has to decide what to do. But h6, opening up the king side here creates too much volatility. Knight to d7, queen to e7, queen to d6. This is a fine continuation. G5 just presses on white too aggressively in a situation where you're winning. Basically, if you're winning by a piece, you don't really need to play aggressively. You can just sort of wait for white to have to make his kind of decisions on what to play. But with the bishop on h4, I think like queen to d5 or knight to d7, those are the best options for black. And yeah, now I think with knight on g4, bishop to e3, knight takes, queen takes, black has to decide what to do. But overall, this situation is worse with white having expanded that queen side, or white having expanded that king side. I think that this ends up being worse for black. Yeah. Knight takes, queen to b4, c3, queen to a3. Yeah, queen to a3, rook to d2, queen to c1, king to e2. And black, I think, is basically I think black is better here. But opening up this king side was just not a good plan. Nor was playing knight to g4, to be honest. Knight to g4 seems to just basically hang a piece, so worse. Anyways, interesting. Yeah, so basically h6 and g5. H6 and g5. This played out worse for black. Bishop to f2, queen to e7, knight to h4. But yeah, knight to g4 is hanging a piece for black, so that's not particularly good. Okay. All right. So what did we learn from this game, black? I think what did we learn here? Is my question. So pawn takes d4, queen to c4, bishop takes c3. I think this was a good opportunity. I think I'm thinking yeah, knight to c6 looks pretty good for black. Pawn takes, castles, rook to d1, h6. I think this expansion on the king side, that was an error. Knight to g4 also hangs the piece. So yeah, a lot of errors, or basically a lot of pressure came down on black after all this queenside play. So I think yeah, I think it's about tactics. At the end of the day, I think basically tactics is the most important aspect of this. I also want to look over this opening just for a second. I think e3 is kind of a weird opening, but I think that black's best way of capitalizing on e3. Knight to f6 is probably good. Bishop to b4, and then I would say c6 here. I think c6 basically provides you a tempo. It allows black to expand, move his pieces forward with white having to decide what to do. So c6, I think, better. c6, and then white has options. I don't know, bishop to d3 is one. But yeah, c6 moving the pawn forward here and threatening on b5. That's a good play for, I think this is slightly better for black. Bishop to d7 is fine too. And then a6 makes sense, and then basically you're up a piece. Yeah, so I think basically c6 and then bishop to d3 here is the option for white. But yeah, bishop to d7, a6, bishop to a4, bishop takes a4, b3. Yeah, basically black's, it's sort of up to black to decide what to do here. Knight to c3, e6, e4, bishop to b4, and yeah, black's winning. So I think, yeah, c6 pushing the bishop back to d3, that's, that is better than bishop to d7. So it's up to you, c6, and, white has to sort of decide what to do. What central break is black going for? I think probably knight to d7, e5. I assume it's e5, but that's a fair question. Knight to d7 and e5, I think. But knight to g4, I think, is a bad continuation. Anyways, if anyone else wants to play, if anyone else wants to join, we have the Blitz tournament today. Yeah, thank you very much for sending the game. Thank you very much for sending the game, Cigarnoth. I think your ideas here Basically, I think you played fine, but I think you would benefit a lot from doing the tactics training that I'm recommending. The tactics training is a really good way to improve. I think it's a good way to get to it's a good way to improve your overall middle gameplay. I think that's pretty important. Let me just get you the link for the tournament. The tournament today, we're up to 7 players. Awesome. But yeah, basically, today's tournament is right here. If anyone else wants to join. But yeah, we've got a good tournament here. Awesome. All right, let's take a look. Basically this idea, black's up by about 7 pawns here. I think this game is pretty much concluded at this early stage. So, yeah, let's take a look at Aphilion's game. Aphelion, I think, sent me the link to his game too. Give me a second. All right, Aphilion's game, cool. Thanks for joining. All right, Aphilion's game is playing. Aphilion's playing white here. So e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, and then basically this early g6. This is basically goes into the accelerated dragon, right? So accelerated dragon is black plays g6 on move 4. Yeah, accelerated dragon, and then white has to decide, either c4 or knight to c3 for white. So c4, bishop to g7, bishop to e3, knight to f6. Knight c3, castles, and white has to decide what to do. So bishop to e2 is possible for white. So bishop to e2, d6, castles, bishop to d7, rook to c1, and white has to sort of decide what to do to continue. But I think that this against the accelerated dragon, the c4 is definitely playable. This is a fair point. It gets kind of control over d5. Bishop g7, bishop e3, knight to f6, knight to c3. And yeah, what does white do here? I think white's got a pretty solid center position. I don't think the queen can really undermine with b6 very effectively. Knight to g4 is a move for black here. This tactic, knight to g4, and then queen takes g4, knight takes g4, queen to d1. Yeah, this is fine for white. Knight e6, rook to c1, queen a5, queen to d2, and it's sort of up to, it's basically sort of up to white to decide what to do. But anyways, that is that. Knight to e6 is bad. Good question. You're talking about, or I don't know, knight to e6. What do you mean by knight? The knight to e6 line is what? Knight to e5? Knight g4. Oh, here, yeah, for sure. Queen to d1, knight to e6 is yeah. So knight takes d4, queen d1, and then yeah, I think knight to e6 might be bad there. Good point. So basically, it looks like the engine prefers e5. E5 makes sense. That creates play for black in the center. But yeah, knight to e6 seems to cause developmental problems for black. You're right. So this knight to g4 line, knight to g4, and then queen takes g4. So knight c3, knight g4, queen takes g4, knight takes d4, queen to d1. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like the most popular move, knight to e6, is definitely not, the engine is really not in agreement with the opening book here. So yeah, good point, Rand. This knight to e6, that offers, this makes black, this basically makes black worse. So e5, bishop to d3, castles. White's up by about half a point here. But yeah, this line is that e5 line is better for black than the knight to e6 line. No, I think e5. I mean, e5 is the engine best. I mean, no, I mean, I don't know. It's an opening here. I mean, it's the second most common in this opening book, right? So I mean, what would you suggest if not knight to e6 or e5, the two most common moves? What would you say? Knight to c6 instead? But I think this is fine. So yeah, e5, knight to c6, queen to d2, queen to a5, rook to c1, d6, bishop to e2. This continuation for white, basically here white's up by like 0.8 or so. I don't know. Yeah, black has to decide what to do. Bishop to e2, and then, I don't know, castles maybe? Castles, bishop e6, rook fd1, rook fc8, b3. This looks good for white. Yeah, bishop's on e6. Or, oh, you're thinking bishop to e6 in that continuation? Well, it's not playable. So wait, knight to c6, and then bishop to e6 here? Okay, so you're thinking what? Bishop to e6 here? I mean, this is pretty mainline. This is pretty mainline. Where black could castle or play bishop to e6. Nah, that never happened. So castles here, that was never an option. Uh, Castles, bishop to e2, d6, castles, bishop. So here's where bishop to e6 comes in. And the knight g4 line where we looked at in theory. Okay, yeah, let's take a look. Knight to g4, queen takes g4, queen d1. No, I don't think so, Rand. Um, Interesting point, though. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, let's go over the middle game for a second. Here we go. Go over the. Here we go. Sorry about that. But yeah. One second. So yeah, we're in the middle game. Would you like to slow down? Say right around here. Let's think about White's plans here. Yeah, no. I'm interested in slowing this down. All right. Bishop takes, rook takes, queen to d3, rook to b8, and rook to c2, rook to d7, bishop takes, king takes. So yeah, let's slow this one down, Aphelion. Let's think about this. Okay. Bishop to e3, knight to f6, knight to c3, castles, bishop to e2, d6. Okay. So it's sort of up to decide what to do here, right? Oh, no, no worries at all. No, let's go. So here, e4, c5, knight to f3, knight to c6, d4, pawn takes, knight takes, g6. Okay, so it's sort of, so knight g6, c4, bishop to g7, bishop to e3, and then black has to sort of decide what to do, right? Knight to c3, castles, bishop to e2, d6. And, what should white do here is my question. So, castles, bishop to d7, rook to c1. It's a really interesting game. So yeah, e4, c5, knight to f3, d4, knight takes, g6, c4, bishop to g7, bishop to e3. And now, what are white's... So basically, we've played into this... we have a solid 13 minutes, so we have plenty of time on this. So knight to c3, castles, bishop to e2, d6, and now what does white do? Castles, I think, is an option. Bishop to d7, rook to c1, and yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this game is looking pretty good for white here. So yeah, e4, c5, knight f3. This is like the Sicilian, So bishop to e3, knight f6, knight to c3, castles. I think white's got a pretty good play here. Bishop to e2, d6. This makes sense, I think. I think white's basically got the, white's kind of got solid play against this, dragon. I don't think there's anything bad about this. Maybe queen to d2 or castles. Bishop d7, rook to c1. I think this is fine. I think white's up by about a pawn. Yeah, so let's, so Aphelion, I think you're in a pretty good place here, as white. And now what does white do? Or, now what should black do? Knight takes d4, I guess. But it's up to white to sort of determine what to do here. Rook c8, knight b3, or rook to e1. I think here with rook to d8, probably knight to b3. But it's sort of, yeah, it's this one's not obvious to me. So rook e1, what do you think? I mean, it's a tough move, right? Good question. So I'm thinking knight to b3, maybe. Yeah, knight to b3 would be better, right? I think knight to b3. Yeah. Yeah, tough question, honestly. Hmm. Rook to c8, knight to b3. Yeah, I think knight to b3 is better. You might as well. No, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, Aphelion. I think rook to e1 is a fine continuation. It's not as if it's a bad continuation. Yeah, rook to e1, bishop takes, bishop to c6, queen to d2, a6, or rook to b8. I think this is fine. Hey, you got a brilliancy. That's cool. Yeah, turquoise move. That's pretty cool. So yeah, basically, what does white do here? Rook f c8, rook e1, knight takes, bishop takes, bishop c8. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking this over. Um, Bishop takes b5, rook takes, queen d3, rook to b8. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, no, I agree. So basically this became a tactically complicated thing. So pawn takes b5, bishop takes b5, and then yeah, this b4 continuation, right? The issue with the bishop takes right immediately is that if bishop takes, then rook takes, then knight takes, and then the queen is hanging, right? So here instead, after b4 as white here. So b4, and then black plays black plays things like queen takes b4, and then you play, I don't know, bishop takes b5, as white, and then what, like bishop to h6. But yeah, this continuation leads to a lot fewer of these problems, because now, with this, you don't have to worry about knight takes rook. You can just play rook to b1. Rook to b1 pressure on this file. So yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, no, I like it. I like this. I prefer this line. b5, pawn takes, bishop takes. What about doing rook to b1 before? Good question. Yeah, so like rook b1 here. Uh, or here. So now rook b1, or what do you think? Rook b1 or b4? I'm very interested as someone, but I'm just curious. But I think b4. Okay, b4. Oh, right here. Yeah. No, very good question. So yeah, rook to b1, and then rook to b1, and then I think bishop to h6 causes some problems. So now what? Now this is sort of tricky, right? So bishop's on h6, and now what does white do? Yeah, no. Thank you guys for clarifying. Um, uh, so bishop to h6, and then what does white do? Queen to d1 probably, or okay, queen takes h6. Well, queen takes h6 I don't think works, right? Because queen takes h6, queen to d4, right? Or that's the response by black. So queen to h6 can't be a line for white, I don't think, because just this is too good for black. The other lines, yeah. So I don't think that. Maybe queen to d1 here. But I think that this line is just unfortunately not as good. I think that this line runs into, I think you have to open up this file, or this rook file, to make that rook to b1 work. Because I think that here rook to b1 is good, but I think otherwise with this queen takes b4, rook to b1 immediately, I think black can just play bishop to h6, and that's very disruptive. So maybe queen to d1. Queen to d1, and then black has like bishop takes e2 or something. Bishop takes e2, and then rook takes e2 or rook takes b4. But this is a little bit loose for white. It's just sort of tricky for white to come up with opportunities here. So rook takes b4 probably. But yeah, like rook takes e2, I guess. Fine. Rook takes b4, fine. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so I think it's a really good question, someone, and always feel free to ask questions. Uh, super happy to go over them. But yeah, basically here after bishop takes b5, rook takes b5, rook to b1. Now white can just basically challenge on this file. It's a really good question. But bishop takes, opening up the file with bishop takes b5 is sort of a necessity here. So rook to c2, rook takes, rook there, and yeah, but I think white's up by about a pawn. Yeah, Rapid Arena today. Yeah, thank you very much for pointing to that. Yeah, we've got 1 minute left, but that was a better continuation, Aphelion. I think that b4 really, that b4 provided an opportunity to win a piece. I think the opening was played well. Here, let me just, I'll link the tournament again. But yeah, basically that line, bishop to e2, and then this line for white. This should provide a situation where white is better by about 0.4, and white carries a win into that. But I think that the game, with ideal tactical play, pawn takes, bishop takes, b4 is your move. So I think awesome. No, thank you, Aphelion. Sorry I feel like we didn't go through the whole game here, but yeah, this line should win for white. Yeah, and I look forward to looking at the rest of your game too, Aphelion. I really appreciate it, and yeah, this is a great win, but I think b4 provided an even quicker win. Anyways, I'm going to stream the first free tournament, and yeah, cool. Awesome. We can look it over. Let's look it over for a second. Just the tactic at the end. Oh yeah, I think... Yeah, this queen to 8. Yeah, nice. No, I like it a lot, Aphelion. And I think as you continue to study tactics, these types of closing tactics, these are available. But yeah, great tactical vision. Nice. Wins you a pawn. And yeah, really, getting to a higher level in chess is mostly about being able to execute these types of tactics. This won a pawn, but maybe the next one wins a piece, but, and maybe a pawn is enough to win the game. So really, getting to the next level, I think, is really about doing your tactical study and getting to the point where where you are more comfortable with your, with your tactical play. Like, they come up so frequently, they come up, basically, tactics come up multiple times per game, in multiple situations. And I think that's, yeah, this is a great opportunity. Cool. So interesting. All right, on to the next, on to the game. All right. So it's a Swiss today, just to clarify. It's a rapid Swiss. Yeah, no problem, Ophelia. No, very happy to review it. All right, so this one was out of the Scandinavian, and black got d4. I think that should be okay for black, but now white's getting a little bit of play. Oh, bishop to d6. Oops. Yeah, see, that was dumb. That was not the right move. Let's see. All right, I got lucky. Interesting game. All right. Let's see. Knight to a6. There's got to be a way to capitalize on this material advantage. Okay. Sort of tricky too. I have to decide whether to just trade into an opposite colored bishop endgame. I guess I probably can, right? I think I'll be 2 pawns up, but this is sort of a complicated endgame situation. Yeah, good job. Good playing, someone. Huh. What happened? Yeah, of course. Here. Let me just send you. Yeah, here you go, Valor Knight. I think I've got the yeah, it's only the first round. I mean, there's only 3 rounds. It's a pretty short tournament today, but I figured it would take a reasonable amount of time. Three rounds seems like enough. Yeah, I think this should be enough. I don't want to hang any of the pawns, but... maybe I hung one of them. I'm not sure. Although I think I just got a good break on that. All right. Interesting game. Interesting game. Okay. All right. Good game. Cool. All right. So I think I'm going to wrap the stream. Thanks all very much for joining. Thanks all for playing the tournament, for being here today. Next stream is at 9:35 p.m. Eastern tonight. That's in about 11 and a half hours from now. Thank you all very much for joining. Thanks for being here. 9:35 p.m. Eastern tonight, and hope to see you there. Thanks very much for joining the stream. Thanks for participating and for sending your games. And on to the next game. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. Have a good night, or have a good day. See you later. Bye.